Okay, welcome again. Sorry to those of you that are getting pinged multiple times. Um, I am just answering questions as they come up, as I see them. So here's another question from Manjunath. And the question is, I can feel the sensation in my nostril when the breath is coming in, but when the breath is going out, I'm not feeling sensation in the same spot of the nostril. Instead, I can feel it above my upper lip. Is it okay to feel sensation in one spot while breathing in and another spot while breathing out? So that's the question, and I'll try to answer that. Before I do, I'll say again, um, one, if you're listening to this live, please feel free to ask follow-up questions in the comments. If you're listening to this after the fact, again, please leave a comment and I will do my best to answer with a video response. I'll also say that I'm not a Vipassana teacher. I'm just a lay practitioner that's been practicing for about a decade. And I do teach not in the Vipassana tradition, but just in the secular mindfulness space. So again, the question was that if I notice sensations in one part, let's say the nostril when I'm breathing in and a different part when I'm breathing out, is that okay? Or should I feel sensations in the exact same place? So I think the way to answer this, I think easiest for me in way of an analogy, and this is how I think about it, that what we're trying to do when we are doing anapana is that we are practicing a couple of different skills. We're practicing intentionally bringing our attention to one place, and we pick the nostrils and the breath because that's something that happens both autonomously as well as intentionally. Also because it's something that's portable, it's secular, it doesn't require belief, imagery, any kind of religious associations, etc. So there's all these reasons why we do that. But where it's essentially we're practicing bringing our attention to a particular spot. We're also practicing keeping our attention there. And in the Vipassana progression, in the first 3 days, you're learning Anapana and you're practicing initially with a larger area, so the entire nostril. And then over time, you start to narrow the area of focus. Um, so you can think about what you're doing as um, learning to focus the aperture of your camera. And you're slowly focusing your aperture on one particular spot. And you're doing that so that you can sharpen your ability to bring your attention there. Additionally, as you focus your attention on spots where the sensation of the breath is more nuanced or more mild, then what that's doing is it's sharpening your attention. You can think of it as sort of increasing the sensitivity of a microphone, because naturally the sound there, uh, the sensation, but I'm using a metaphor of sound, the sound is quieter there. So you have to increase the sensitivity of your microphone so that you can pick up that sound. So by focusing on an area here where the sensation is naturally lighter, softer, uh, milder, however you want to say it, you're requiring your body to increase its, or your attention, your awareness to increase its sensitivity so that you can notice that. The reason we do that is because then when we start to scan the body, we've already developed this sharpened sense of sensation, both in terms of our ability to narrow our aperture onto a particular spot, as well as the sensitivity or the ability to pick up very nuanced or subtle sensations in that area. So now coming back to the question, is it okay to notice sensations in two different places, one when I'm breathing in, one when I'm breathing out? I think of this as implying that the aperture in which you're paying attention is actually not as small as it could be, but it's actually a little broad. And so your aperture then is both not just on your nostrils or just on your upper lip, but it's in both. And because it's in both, when you're breathing in, you're noticing the sensation in one place, and when you're breathing out, you're noticing a sensation in another place, and that's okay. Uh, if your aperture was smaller, let's say it was just noticed focused on the nostril, then on one of those you might notice something, and on the other you might notice nothing. And when you notice nothing, that might be uncomfortable for you, which is why you're expanding your aperture to notice something in both the in breath and the out breath. So rather than saying, is it bad or do I have to feel it in the same place? Just think about what it is that's happening to your attention. The fact that you're noticing it in two different places means your aperture is wide enough to notice both of those. If you were to try reducing your aperture, maybe there's a discomfort of not noticing anything, for one, either the out breath or the in breath. But as you keep your attention there, it's possible that the sensitivity of your attention will increase so that you now begin to notice something on both the in breath and the out breath. So that's theory, or that's a model, or that's an analogy or metaphor that may be helpful to think of, to understand what's happening. And I won't say that's actually what's happening, but that's my model for what we're doing in that activity. Um, Practically speaking, the advice that I give and the advice that I use when I'm doing anapana is that I try to focus on the smallest and the most subtle sensation where I can feel something. Because if I just say, okay, now I'm going to bring my attention to the upper lip, and I don't notice anything there, then it's very hard to keep my attention there the whole time, because it feels like there's nothing to pay attention to. So practically what I end up doing is find the first place, the smallest and the most subtle sensation where I can allow my attention to rest. And then once I'm stable and resting there, I'll sort of check in and see, can I notice something in a more subtle area and or in a smaller area. And then I'm sort of playing with that edge. If I'm able to stay at a subtler or smaller area, I'll stay there. As soon as my attention starts to wander or I'm not noticing anything, it means my mind has gotten a little dull, and I'll step back to a larger or a more a higher amplitude signal, as it were. And so I'll keep playing with that edge so that I do have something to keep bringing my attention back to. Uh, but that something, the intention that I have is to make that something smaller and more subtle so that I'm constantly sharpening my attention. So don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I think about it. And maybe you can play with that and see if that helps you sharpen your attention, uh, both in terms of the aperture of the attention as well as the sensitivity of your attention or awareness. I'll pause there. For those of you listening live, if you have a question, please feel free to add it to the comments section or the chat. If you're joining after the fact, please go ahead and add it to the comments, and I'll try to respond back with a video response. Okay. With that, I think that's all I have to say. If you missed the beginning of this, hopefully you can go back and listen on the channel, and keep the comments coming. I'm happy to answer them to the best of my abilities. Thank you.